All right. Good morning. Welcome to the Next Boost podcast. I'm Tate Doolittle. I'm very excited this morning to have Don Torres on the podcast. Don is a longtime friend of the brand. We'll get into more of that here in a moment. But Don, thanks for being on the podcast. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling from?
Calling from Orange County, Southern California. Again, Don Torres, boot nerd. That's how I would describe myself.
Yeah, Don's someone who's been a friend of the brand for a few years now, certainly before I came around, but has provided a wealth of information just in having an outside perspective. You've got a pile of Nick's boots, but you've also got a lot of other boots and a lot of other men's workwear, and that's been really helpful for us to have conversations about that. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the workwear boot game and became a boot nerd.
Well, it's kind of a roundabout story. So I'm not your normal workwear boot guy. I am the managing partner of a wealth management firm in my day job, and and looking at what I wanted to do for the next 25 years of my life, it doesn't include wealth management. So I started looking at boots and doing a lot of research and came across Nick's about 4 years ago. I believe it was 4 years ago.
Okay.
And hemmed and hawed and went down a road of many subpar brands to begin with, and then bought my first pair of Nick's, which were a Falcon, and quickly fell in love. Immediately felt the difference and fell in love with the boot. And then through Reddit, fell in love with the brand. And that's really the story. I've got 30 boots, but I only wear about 5 of them at this point, and they're all Nick's.
You bought the boot that I often recommend. Buy a Falcon, get it in a simple leather, whatever you love. That sounds like that was a great entrance into the market, and a pile of boots later, here you are.
Yeah.
And
a pile.
Your interest extends beyond boots as well. I think boots is your focus, but you've also gotten into the men's workwear game as well, whether it be denim or heritage workwear. Definitely the perfect pairing there, right?
Yeah, it is. And I do a lot of work out in my shop come Friday and the weekends. And, I'm constantly knee deep in dust and dirt, and I needed some clothing that lasts.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel really lucky to have actually spent some time with you in Southern California. I escaped the rain up here and got down there. You and I may or may not be working on a little secret project together. And it was a lot of fun to get to meet you and hear about your history with the brand as a customer and really now as a friend. You and I talk pretty often. I know you and Shyler have built a relationship outside of Reddit as well. We're going to talk about a trip you took here in a minute, but before we do that, let's talk about a trip you recently took to Spokane. And you came up and saw us. And why don't you tell us why you're up here and how that experience was for you and your son?
Well, I promised my son a pair of Nick's for his birthday. And he works in my office, is my right-hand man, and I grind on him pretty hard. I don't give him any reprieve. He's got to be there first and out the door last, and puts up with my weight, so to speak. So I promised him I'd buy him a pair of Nick's. He is also a boot enthusiast, but doesn't have the resources to spend without saving for a year. I don't make life easy on him, so occasionally when I can, I'll spoil him a little bit. And for his birthday, I said, let's fly up to Spokane. We'll get you sized and let you pick your boot. And he was quite excited. Got to Nick's early the next morning and just had a treat of a day. Kelsey was amazing with him. I couldn't have been more pleased. She just stepped right up and made him feel comfortable and took control. And he's got a very odd foot. He's a 9F. which is almost a hobbit foot, I call it. But she was fantastic. Everybody there was awesome. Schuyler showed us around and spent the day with us, and it was the perfect trip. It really was.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah,
Yeah,
the in-store boot fitting experience. I wish everyone could experience it. It's
I
obviously not
I do too.
feasible,
I do too.
given where we're located. But I think one of the things, just observing from the outside, that's always interesting to folks is we're used to walking into a shoe store and you want to try on a size 9D Nike in this color, and an associate goes and gets it and brings you that specific thing that you wanted to try. And maybe you try a size here or there, but largely you walk out with that boot that you, or that shoe that you were interested in. I think one of the things that's always fun for me to watch when I'm in the showroom is Kelsey is just a master of this craft. And so she might put you in a boot that you have no interest in. It's a full NFPA rated hot shot boot. And she's doing that because that's the try on boot we have to figure out if that's the correct width. And then you might have that on for a minute and you're going to put on another boot and walk around for 5 minutes. It's a completely different style. And I think on one hand, for folks, that can feel disorienting. I just overheard a conversation the other day where someone said, "Oh, no, I want this boot, not that one." So it's an unusual experience. But then the flip side of that is it's really a lot of fun for folks to get to see a lot of boots, some in their size, some not in their size, feel all the different lasts and how they fit. I'm glad you guys were able to have that experience, and I hope that more people can do that.
I wish everybody could. It's not just the feeling the different lasts. It's almost immersing yourself in the history. Right. We've got
Right.
all the cut boots up, all the worn boots, the old ones sitting on that table. It's a history lesson in boot making. It really is. And
It is.
then if you do get the opportunity to go back past the door and see all the leathers and smell, it's the smell that's just fantastic. And more than that, it's everybody grinding, right? It's the hammering, it's the sewing, it's the sanding, it's the smell of the glue. It's oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the smell. Every single person that walks in, it's one of the first things they say. It's really unique, but it's a special place, and when folks are around, it's a really fun opportunity to stop in the shop if you have the chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don, the reason we brought you on today is we want to talk about a trip that you just took. You took a fantastic trip, and I want to hear more about it. And I want to hear about, what were you doing out there? We'll get into a little bit of history of how you got into that other hobby. And then we're going to talk about why your boots matter in that specific activity. So why don't you start off telling us kind of where you were and how you got there?
Well, I hang out with a few guys who have very busy schedules, and we all got into Jeeping. I'm going to say, well, me since the time I was 19.
Okay.
But as far as adulthood, about 40, age 40, I'm 58 now, so about 18 years ago, and did a lot of rock crawling, a lot of serious rock crawling, and I can send you some videos if you want to add that to this. But it seemed as when you're 40 and you've got some excess resources and time, you do stupid things, and we were breaking axles and drive shafts, and every time we'd go out, it'd be a few $1,000s of repairs, and that quickly got old with my wife, and so we transitioned into, as we grew older, more of an overlanding style relationship. And now we've got a bunch of guys where we got together recently and went out to the Grand Canyon and traveled from Southern California to Utah, St. George, then down to the south north rim on the south side.
Right.
And then spent 4 days going up along the edge of the north rim, which was phenomenal. Absolutely stunning. We saw two other groups in 4 days.
Wow.
We're in the middle of nowhere, and from 105 degrees the first day to 72 degrees on the last 2 days, all kinds of weather, all kinds of terrain.
Right. Oh, that's awesome, man. I know it was fun when I did get to meet in Southern California, just getting to know each other and realize now it's both an interest that you and I both had. I'm
Right.
doing the math now, and 18 years ago is probably when I bought my first Jeep, my 2000 TJ, which I still have downstairs, which my wife also does not love when I start spending money on. But yeah, I have a 2000 TJ and a JT Gladiator now, and I want to hear more about your rig. It's you have built the perfect rig for your
Yeah.
application, and then we'll talk about your boots.
Yeah. So I drive a 2012 JK, which there's nothing on it that is stock or came with the Jeep. I've rebuilt it 3 times. It's got a 5.7 Hemi in it that's been worked on quite a bit and puts out quite a bit of horsepower. Dana 60 in the rear, Pro Rock 44 in the front, Southern Hot Rod transmission. It's got everything on it. Like I said, there's nothing, body armor, extra tanks. It goes and it goes. Running 37s
Yep.
with 382 gears in the back. So she
Nice.
runs, but it sucks the gas too. On that last trip, I averaged, including highway miles, I averaged just over 8.8 miles a gallon. So,
Yeah,
and air down, I get about 5.7 when I air down the tires.
you were texting me from the trail on your Garmin InReach and saying trip is going great, but unsure if we'll have enough gas to get back. So, um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I joke that my gas mileage is great driving downhill, but it's not 5 yet. So I guess I still have some room to go.
It's worse than my motorhome. It really is. It just sucks it down, but
Yeah.
it's fun. It's a giggle. It's a giggle at this point. So
Yep, that's awesome. I won't make you retell the whole story, but it is a Jeep that has burned to the ground and also been rebuilt as well. So that's probably why it's as
hence,
styled as it
hence the
is.
reason it got rebuilt. Yeah,
Yep,
this last time.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear a little bit about the boots that you took on the trip and why boots matter and kind of connect the two for me. So you've been through every nut and bolt on your Jeep to ensure that you can go on this multi-day adventure. I'm sure then you're very considerate of what goes in that Jeep and you're also considerate of what you're wearing on that trip. So kind of take me through that journey and why boots matter in overlanding.
Well, so yes, boots matter. They're paramount. We spend a lot of time hiking. We hiked down the canyon to the river and came back up.
Nice.
And you spend a lot of time in the driver's seat. So there were days where we spent 170 miles on dirt trails, just traversing the canyon, and you have to be comfortable, right?
Yep.
You have to be comfortable and confident when you're hiking on rock, and then you've got to be comfortable when you're sitting for 8 or 9 hours in the saddle trying to traverse a trail. So I brought 2 pairs.
Not to interrupt you there, but I think people hear 170 miles and they think you're in the rig for 3 hours because they're used to jumping on the highway. 170 miles an hour when you're aired down. Sorry, 170 miles when you're aired down. That's going to take you the entire day, right?
9 hours.
Yeah.
9 hours, and we were lucky and happy about that. But so I was thinking long and hard, and normally I just took. I would take the Builder Pros on a normal trip, and but this time I knew we were going to be in the seat a lot. So the Chelseas, which I had bought the Chelseas about a year ago, and was going back and forth because I love the Builder Pro on the Thurman Last. It's the most comfortable boot I own, and so I ordered the Chelseas on the Thurman Last, and in their defense, I didn't give them enough time on the break-in because I always defaulted to my favorite boot, right? And on this trip, I thought, man, I just need something that I can throw on real quick without lacing up, jump out of the Jeep, throw them on, jump in the seat.
Yep.
And I committed to bringing them. I will tell you that since I've been back, they've all I've been wearing. They're the perfect driving boot and the perfect camp boot, as far as I'm concerned. When we're hiking and I knew I was going to be out, walking 5, 10, 15 miles, our longest hike was just shy of 14.4 miles.
Okay.
I'd wear the Builder Pros because of the support and the 8-inch boot, and you can strap them down and lock in tight.
Right.
But around camp, the daily driving, it was the Chelsea all day long that passed the test. And now they're on my feet right now. It's Friday, and they're on my feet. So they sit in the bedroom as opposed to this room, which is not connected to the house. So
yeah, I think we've talked about this before outside of the recording. Finding, particularly when you're driving, that pedal feel matters. I commute a lot, and so I've given consideration of what boot I wear when I'm commuting and doing other activities where I need to feel the pedals. You felt like the Chelsea kind of was the best of both worlds. You could get out and you could go hike, but you could jump in and you were still comfortable for hours. You could feel the pedals. It wasn't kind of getting in the way of the driving experience.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And I actually have a wedge sole on these.
Okay.
And my Jeep is very touchy on the throttle. It's got a Banks throttle pedal monster on it. So, and I have it in race mode all the time. So it's jumpy.
Yeah.
But no, pedal feel was great. Everything about him. There's nothing I would change about this boot at this point.
Yep.
It did have some heel slip for the first probably 3 months that I owned them.
Right.
But that, as they break in, it's a stiff midsole. So as they break in and everything starts to kind of mold to your foot, there's no heel slip now.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point that the break-in experience is a little bit unique to the Chelsea, just in that the very thing that makes it a comfortable boot on and off means it is not as tight on your foot. And so, it can take a little bit of time for that midsole to break in. But I can tell you, I've mentioned this before, but right now I've got a mule skinner wearing them. I've got multiple farmers wearing them. I've got a saddle maker. People who need the ability to have a tough boot, but then run inside the house, or a tough boot, jump in the truck. It really suits that well. The other thing I would say, Lucas and our whole product team has put a lot of work into bringing additional iterations. So you mentioned your Chelsea as the wedge sole. You can see that in the Chelsea and some other pull-ons that we have. We're getting more sole options as well. So if a guy wants a big lug sole and the big heel, that kind of iconic look, we have that available. But you can also put something like a max support wedge on it, wear it as an everyday boot, in and out of the house, and it's going to be a great option.
Do you want to see the boots?
Yes, let's see them. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So first pair, got the Falcon, right, in a chestnut English bridle, right, Wicket and Craig. Fantastic.
This was your first boot ever, right? First Nick's boot?
This was my first boot ever, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the Builder Pros were my second, and this is on the Thurman last.
Okay.
Right? I just snapped the leather laces after a year and a half, and I put new ones on 2 weeks ago.
Before we move to the next boot, let's talk about the Thurman last for just a second. Anyone who's paying attention has seen that we're pushing that pretty hard right now. The reason we're pushing it is because it's so amazing. It just provides a little bit more space in the front of the boot. I don't think I've had anyone order a Thurman boot or put one on and not say, wow, this is incredibly comfortable. It sounds like that's the experience that you've had as well.
By far the most comfortable boot I've ever put on.
Yeah.
And again, this is, I've got 32 pairs of boots right now.
Right.
And hands down, I've put them on at 4:00 in the morning and actually not taking them off till the next day.
Yep.
When we were pushing hard, and you don't even realize it. And the first time I realized that, I was coming home after a day and a half of having them on, and I hadn't slept in 36 hours. And I pulled into the neighborhood, and I realized as I got off the freeway and pulled into the neighborhood, I didn't even think about the boots. My feet aren't tired. I'm tired, but you know how some of them you just want to get them off, right? I got to get my feet out of these things. Not with these. You can wear them. Like I said, I've worn them for 36 hours straight.
That's awesome. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, if you don't know what we're talking about right now with the Munson Last, go watch. There's a bunch of videos. We have some on our own channel, and Weston Rosanville has some as well, talking about the Knicks Thurman Last. The very short version is it's got a great military history where they adapted from a very kind of dress last tight front to a more anatomical shape in the forefront of in the to a more anatomical shape in the front of the boot, and it allows a little bit more toe splay. And there's a great history. Go look it up online, but ultimately it's just providing a little bit more comfort. Yeah, there's a great shot of it.
This right here is more straight than the 55 or the 67, and then you've got more room out here for the pinky toe. And I wear a double E, and I've got a wide foot, but by far the most comfortable boot. And then it comes down and sucks in on the waist. So there are other brands out there that have a very wide toe box, but they also have a very wide waist, and you float in them. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
In fact, I own some, and I don't own them anymore.
And not to beat this dead horse here, but I don't have a wide foot. I have just a very standard 8.5D. But I find, so when I first saw the Munson Last, I was like, well, I probably don't need that extra space. It's amazing. When I put it on, it's great because it's still snug where it needs to be, but it just provides a little bit more room in the front. So glad you brought that up. Why don't you show us your last boot or two back there, and then we'll wrap up with talking about the experience.
Very good. So these are I'm into heritage clothing, and I fell in love with the anvil and stared at it for a year and a half online, and then in talking with Schuyler, I finally was confident enough to get these. But this boot is the one that most people stop me and ask me about, because in Southern California you don't see the heel, right? But I love the toe spring. I love the black wax flesh. It gets quite a few comments when we go out to a bar, and I've got them on, and it's a great, comfortable boot. Now, I didn't think I was going to like the high heel, having never owned one before, but I'm sold.
Oh, I'm the same way. I'm fully sold on the high heel. I absolutely love a wedge sole for comfort. But if I'm getting dressed up and I want to go somewhere, I'm pulling out my Roberts every time, because I just love that big tall heel stack. Yeah. The anvil doesn't get the love that it deserves. That sprung toe is not something that we've pushed or paid a lot of attention to. But boy, your boot in particular is just a gorgeous boot. I love it.
I've got one in the queue, the Prospector. With that cognac, I do believe.
Yep.
I don't even remember what leather I ordered, but I ordered a plain toe Prospector that is in the line, hopefully.
Awesome.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Well, that's a good transition, Don. The couple of last questions here I was going to ask. What's the next boot that you have your eye on at Nick's? You always have a few boots in production with us, so it sounds like you've got a Prospector. Anything else out there that you have your eye on?
I do. What I can't wait to get, now that I've actually held the leather in my hand, is that Greener Pastures Traveler. When we were up there with Grant for his birthday, I actually got to see the leather and hold it, and I can't tell you, I've seen a lot of leather.
Right.
It's one of the prettiest leathers I've ever held in my hands. It's just an absolutely gorgeous product. So the Traveler, I've got the Prospector, but I have the Brandle, which I did get a picture of.
Yes.
And it's coming down the line as we speak. So I'm excited. I told my wife, though, that I wouldn't buy any more boots until the end of 2025, I've made a promise to her, and I've got to stick with that. So it's become an obsession almost, and I've got to get rid of a few that I haven't worn in over a year and a half, 2 years, frankly, because they don't even compare.
I,
But with
I
these new ones coming in, I've got my lineup.
I know how that goes. I've said it on the podcast before, but I often have to tell my wife when I bring a pair of boots home, is this a boot that I own now? Is this a boot that I purchased? I had a couple boots the other day in the back of my truck that I'm using for a photo shoot, and so suddenly she thinks I have three more boots. So
Right.
I've kept my collection modest as well, but I also understand how you get where you are these days because right now I was wearing a Traveler and it's a fantastic boot. I love it. It's kind of that all day comfort, throw it on and roll. But I wish it was in a Thurman last. You start, the deeper in this game you get, the more you want to start tweaking things along the way.
Right.
And the cool thing is that's what we invite people to do. If you see something you love, um, there's a good chance it's on the website. It might be a little bit difficult to find, but there's a good chance it's on the website. But if not, we can always help you out through customer service, do our best to build the dream boot for you.
Though, I would recommend if it's your first time to keep it simple. Right.
Yes.
Go with the boot that caught your eye the first time. Don't try and get too fancy. I was absolutely manic about these Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
I probably called 30 times, changing things, and it wasn't needed. Um, pick the boot that catches your eye and roll with it, and
Yep.
then you're gonna come back and buy a second pair. It's what happens,
Yep.
and use that as an example of, okay, this is what I would change, the fine tuning, right? It's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You bring up a really good point here, Don, and actually, all my questions because that's what I was going to end on. Is what advice do you give to a new boot buyer? But I think you're absolutely right to keep it simple. A lot of times we tell folks that on the podcast, but they probably go to our website and simple might not be obvious. I'll give you a rundown, and I'm curious what you think. If I were coming in and I wanted to buy the iconic Pacific Northwest boot, that's going to be a Builder Pro or a Hot Shot, and that's what we do. But realize that's kind of the most built, toughest, most badass boot you can buy. I actually started with an Urban Logger. Urban Logger is a very similar boot to a Builder Pro, but it's a little bit shorter. It's a little bit lighter weight leather, same sole, a little bit more approachable, but absolutely still tough as nails. I use it around the
Yep.
house. Can use it for anything. So I think that's kind of the iconic P&W boot. And then I think you nailed the other option. I can't tell you how often I recommend a Falcon to folks who just want a good boot that they can wear up on date night, cleans up nicely, but is still tough. It's got all the DNA and heritage of a Pacific Northwest boot. To me, that's the Falcon, maybe the Robert. Keep it simple for that first boot. I think either of those are fantastic options. Any other additions you would add to that?
The Americana, right?
Yes.
I like the sprung toe look, so I would say the Prospector. I know the Anvil. They don't get much love, right?
Yep.
But they're there. As far as a pull on, I think what's underplayed is the Station Master.
Yep.
That's a very well designed boot, with that iconic look. If you're into engineers, they're fantastic. And then the Chelsea. Don't underestimate this boot that I have on. It's quickly become my go-to. In fact, I know that I've changed because my Builder Pros and my Chelseas were side by side, and I grabbed the Chelseas and walked out of the house. So,
Yeah.
and that's hard to beat that boot behind me. It really is.
Yeah.
And now I'm just throwing these things on. Probably because I'm older and I can't bend over as much, but who knows? Who knows?
Well, that's quite the endorsement. You're in boots 7 days a week, as far as I know. So if you're not in your golf shoes, so um,
I think
with
I'm
that
the only
on,
financial advisor. I'm the only financial advisor that wears boots all week to the office.
that's
Right?
right. Yeah.
Uh,
Hey, it's a look. It's iconic. It's eye catching. For me, particularly when I put on that tall heel, I just you stand a little taller. You walk into the meeting. I think it's a great look. Yeah, I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation, Don. Thank you so much,
Perfect.
not just for today, but just the friend you've been to the brand. You and I talk all the time, and I really appreciate your perspective, and excited about some of the things that we're working on together, and look forward to
I
seeing
am
you.
too. Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
absolutely.
You got it. You can call me a Knicks fanboy. I am, and
Yeah,
I freely admit it.
and you
But
are also on Reddit. You're El Jefe on Reddit, so
right.
now you guys have met El Jefe in the flesh, Don Torres.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate the conversation.
You got it. You take care. Thanks, Tate. Take
Awesome.
care. Tell everybody I said hello.
I will.